The major problem with the 2021 game Returnal is that it doesn't reward risk-taking in its gameplay. Returnal is a third-person shooter, meaning most of the time you'll be doing just that. Shooting. This means it's generally a good idea to stay a distance from the enemies. This gives you more reaction time to dodge their projectiles and allows for easier aiming. There's nothing inherently wrong with games that emphasize a more cautious style of gameplay, but I don't think that's what Returnal was going for. You're not setting up defenses and managing your loadout. You're running around frantically, like a squirrel on cocaine, dodging enemy attacks while trying to get a few shots in. At least some of the time you are, but we'll get to that in a minute. The recent Doom games had a great solution for this. For consistent health refills, you have to take out the enemy with a melee attack. This means that while you can hang back and deal damage from afar, you're encouraged to get right up in enemies' faces pretty frequently. Returnal has some equivalent to this, but it only takes it a quarter of the way there. Enemies drop obolites when killed, which are basically money. The obolites disappear after a short while, so there is a bit of encouragement to advance to the enemy's place of death. But there's still two issues here. The first is that while the obolites disappear after a while, it's nowhere near fast enough to give you a sense of urgency. Even if you're not pushing forward constantly, you can still pick up plenty from enemies without realizing it. The second issue is that obolites just aren't that valuable. The game throws plenty at you outside of enemy encounters, and everything that can be bought with them is easily findable on its own. Having enemies drop health and items that expire, and expire faster, would actually solve two of Returnal's problems in one. You'd be inclined to play more aggressively, and it would cut down on the monumental amount of time spent running around each area, picking up items after you've killed all the enemies. Each zone has a number of pickups strewn about it, that just sit there until you either decide to gather them or not. They never disappear, which means that there's little reason to pick them up during combat, as taking the time to run over and see what the item is could easily result in you taking some damage. This means that the optimal way to play is taking care of the enemies and then running all through each area picking up any items that you want. It doesn't take long playing Returnal to notice that you spend an inordinate amount of time running around empty levels, maybe even more time than you spend in combat. It makes no sense for something that's clearly intended to be a high-octane, palm-sweating, ass-clenching experience to spend half the time playing wandering around grabbing items. This change would be welcome in a sequel to Returnal, but it still might not be enough to make it really stand out. The most popular roguelikes are by indie developers, so while it's intriguing to see it tackled by a AAA budget, there's not much Returnal has going for it beyond that. The gameplay consists of shooting and dodging, without much variance between runs. With other roguelikes, even though you are basically playing the same levels over and over again, the developers take care to make sure it doesn't feel like it. In the best of the genre, two separate runs can almost feel like entirely different games, based on the weapons and abilities you're given. The key to a great roguelike is giving the player variety, a point that Returnal sorely misses. You'll dodge and shoot and dodge and shoot, and sometimes melee and dodge and shoot. The controls, story, and graphics are all fine, but it doesn't deliver anything unique enough to justify its higher budget and price tag. You'd expect a AAA roguelike to have even more possible playstyles, varied environments, and involved story than its indie counterparts. But as it stands now, there's no reason to play it over titles like Hades, or Binding of Isaac, or Enter the Gungeon. It just goes to show that a higher budget doesn't always mean a better game.